Welcome, I'm Nana.
I'm Mette.
And I'm Louise.
Do we really need to talk about boredom at school? Is that relevant? And how can we add to what you and your school are already doing? Many students are bored in school. Not only do they get bored once in a while, they are so bored or so frequently bored that it influences their learning, health and well-being. This talk is about boredom and how to battle boredom in schools. Back in 2016, we went to a conference in Denmark. The first national well-being study, including all schools in Denmark, was presented. This was the first time that we could actually document that boredom is part of many students' experiences at school. You will learn more about the specific numbers in a few moments. From research and talking with students and teachers from all over, we learned that boredom is in fact a big part of life in school today. We will show you why it is important to be aware of and what to do to have more engaging education instead of boredom. We will share some of our work from our book, The Battle Against Boredom in Schools, and we hope that you will get inspired and will do the exercises shown later on with your students, in your classes or at your work. We all know what it's like to be bored, but not all of us have spent time figuring out what the consequences are if boredom is part of everyday life in school. We know a lot about boredom today, and still there are things we need to be aware of when teaching. No teacher wants their teaching to be boring, we know that. And it is our experience that there are a lot of tools and small exercises that can minimize boredom and help the children and the students to get more involved. Now Mette will introduce why we need to battle boredom in schools.
I've been an educational psychologist for 20 years, and of course I've been experiencing boredom in schools. But at that conference, that was the first time where I actually saw numbers for how many children are bored in school. At the Danish conference, they told us that 26% of students are bored, not just a little bit, but they are bored often or very often, or they are bored to a very high degree. When I came home from that conference, I sat down and had dinner with my husband and with my youngest son, Victor, who was 13 years old at that time. I told them about the conference and I told them about these disturbing numbers of bored students in the class, and I expressed that I felt that this was a very high number of students. I was very surprised. And then my son said, "I'm very surprised too. I would have expected the numbers to be much, much higher." I looked at him in horror. What? What do you mean by that? And I asked him, "Honestly, honey, how much time do you spend being bored in school? Not just a little bit, but very much or very often?" And my son, he reflected for a second and then he said 50% of the time. I was terrified. Whenever I send my son to school, I know that he will be bored for 3-4 hours a day. If that was my job, I would quit immediately. So that was my cue to start the battle against boredom. But what is boredom? Boredom is an emotional state where brief periods of boredom might promote action or spark creativity. We use a green traffic light to signal this is the healthy kind of boredom. Long-term periods of boredom causes failure to thrive and to learn and is potentially a health hazard. We use the red traffic light to signal you need to take action. There is not a lot of research in boredom, but there's some. The Danish study from 2016 tells us that 26% of students are bored often or to a very high degree. Even since then, the number of students being bored in the Danish classes has raised even more. We know from an American study that 32% of students are bored in class. And we know from a German study in math that 58% of the students are bored in class. We also know from research on boredom that almost 100% of students are highly motivated, highly engaged, and they love going to school when they start schooling. But we also know that boredom is increasing, engagement is decreasing with years of schooling. Michael Fullan, the Canadian educational researcher, made this statement once. There's only one thing worse than being bored, and that's being responsible for teaching the bored. There's not a lot of research in boredom so far, but the research shows us that 26% of what causes boredom is due to dispositional factors. That means the state of the student. Are they sleepy? Are they motivated? Are they energized? Are they interested? But 74% of boredom in class are due to situational factors. They are due to teaching method, relationships in class, and so on.
You will now have a few seconds to think about these 3 questions. One thing that surprised, one thing that you now wonder, and one thing you recognize from back home. You might take a note so it will be easier for you to remember after today, and it will help you to share with some of your colleagues in a break later on. Louise will now introduce the 5 elements that helps people thrive and flourish, and she will talk a bit about the importance of using character strength in your teaching. After that, we will go through each element in the PERMA model one by one.
When working with engaging students and battling boredom in schools, there's one very fundamental important thing, and that is to work with our students and to teach our students based on a strength perspective. That means that we have to focus on the strengths that every single student has. And actually, these strengths come down to 24 different strengths. And these are universal for all people in the world. And when we talk about strengths and character strengths, we refer to the VIA strengths, meaning values in action. So these strengths are actually values that we all can put into action through our behavior, through our language, and the way we interact with one another. We all have them, all 24 of them, but there are especially 5 of the strengths that will be, for instance, my personal strength profile. This means that this will be the 5 strengths that when I put them into action, when I work from my strengths, even if I work with something that is difficult, then I will feel more authentic, I will be more engaged, and I will be more intrinsically motivated. So we might even talk about the 24 VIA character strengths as our stepping stone when working with engaging education. Besides the strengths, we may also draw upon the PERMA theory. And PERMA is the abbreviation of P for positive emotions, E for engagement, R for relationship, M for meaning, and A for accomplishment. Through this presentation, we will introduce each of the letters from the theory PERMA. The relationship between the character strength and PERMA is actually that when we use our top strength, we will generate more positive emotions, we will feel more engaged, we will be more authentic, and we will have more tolerance for other people, which means that we can enter into more fruitful relationships with others. We also feel a stronger sense of meaning, and we are more likely to accomplish whatever goal we might have set for ourselves. Mette will now introduce the P, the positive emotions.
P is for positive emotion. We base our book on research by Barbara Fredrickson. She tells us the importance of positive emotions. We need at least 3 positive emotions for every negative emotion in order to thrive, and we need even more in order to flourish. She has made a theory called the broaden and build theory. It means that if we have sufficient amount of positive emotions, we widen our cognitive repertoire. That gives us possibilities to see more solutions, to think even more creative. If we have too much negative emotions, we have tunnel vision. We don't see the solutions. We lack creativity. We also extend the chapter on positive emotions with research by creativity researchers Scott Berry Kaufman and Piers Worth in order to demonstrate how can we improve creativity in our student, how can we use positive emotions to make better learning, to make sure that students are thriving. To build positive emotions in classroom, we can do several things. We can use in-between activities such as brain breaks, or we can use activities in the academic content. Now we invite Nana to do a positive emotion exercise on math. So today we're going to do the sheriff. A sheriff stands with his feet a bit apart and he uses his hands to shoot out. So what we can do here is that we shoot out numbers. You can do a 0, you could do a 1, you could do 2, 3, 4, or 5. So what we have to do today, Nana, is to add the numbers on my hands and on Nana's hands. And as soon as you got the result, you shout it out. Okay?
Yes.
Ready to go on 3?
Ready, yeah.
Yes. So we have the numbers 1, 2, 3. 10. And if the result was correct, Nana has the right to say, yes, I did it. Yes, I did it. And I was too slow, or maybe I didn't know the correct number, so I will need to say, oh, we'll do it again.
We'll do it again.
So you can do all kinds of different activities to create positive emotions in the classroom. But always remember to build the bridge from learning in the classroom to everyday life. So consider for a second, what do you do to promote positive emotions in your teaching, in your job, at meetings? To engage and motivate our students to participate actively is a very important job. We may draw on a couple of models that can help us when preparing and carrying out our lessons. The first model that we will show you is about 3 core factors for engaging education. The first one is to create a positive and safe learning environment. The second one is to engage students by involving active learning methods to be active. And the third one is to include content that your students find meaningful. Another important didactic consideration is to allow our students to feel autonomy, a sense of developing competence, and to relate to one another during the learning process. When we are fully engaged, we may even experience flow. The flow zone is also called the optimal learning zone, and it is characterized by a match between the task or challenge and the skills of the students. If students don't have the necessary skills to engage in the challenge or the task, they will feel stressed. And if the students are more skilled than what is needed in order to solve the challenge or the task, they will most probably feel bored. When engaging our students, we may also consider the 7 flow-enhancing factors, which are: number 1, intrinsic motivation, using top strength. 2, clear, tangible, realistic goals. 3, something at stake, meaning that the activity is important and feels important and meaningful. Number 4 is feedback, the importance of giving ongoing relevant feedback on how your students are doing. Number 5, to balance between challenge and competence. Number 6, to remove distractions. And number 7, to have understandable, precise, and doable rules. With your students, you may have a conversation about these 7 factors, and you may ask, as I will ask Nana and Mette. So Nana, which of these 7 flow-enhancing factors is most important to you?
Well, I will choose number 6, to remove distractions, because when I'm writing books or preparing for workshops, I will have to mute my phone and make sure that I'm not disturbed too much.
Yes,
Very good point. Thank you. And let's ask Meta the same question. Which of these 7 flow-enhancing factors is most important for you?
And I would absolutely choose number 1, the intrinsic motivation. And if it's for me, I would like to apply my top strength creativity, and whenever I do so, I'm more intrinsic motivated. But also I think it's quite important to help motivate other people. And in order to do that, I use the 4 T's from Daniel Pink, inspired by the self-determination theory. The 4 T's are: do I have a choice of task? Do I have a choice of technique? Do I have a choice of my team? Or do I have a choice of the time frame?
So actually, you also address how you can encourage and help others to achieve flow. Thank you very much, Mette. And while Mette was telling us and giving us an example of how you can help others achieve flow, we actually touch upon the next letter in the PERMA theory, which is the R for relations.
What is the significance of relationship to learning? And what is the connection between boredom and relationship? Those who thrive best and are happiest have closer friends in whom they confide. It is not a matter of having hundreds of friends on social media, but rather having a few close friends. That's very important. Our need for relatedness is about our wish to be a valued part of a community. Looking into research from Beimeister, DC and Ryan, Larry, Fredrickson, we get a lot of good arguments on why relationships are important. And we all need a minimum of social relations and stable, caring relationship. We need to belong to feel safe. And if we don't feel safe in class, we spend time where our brain, especially the amygdala, is focusing on flight or fright strategies instead of doing math. As a teacher, you have to focus not only on the relationship between the students, but also on your relationship with every student. In our book, you get several exercises and examples on how to develop and strengthen relationship. And today, we brought one brain break to show that even a small break where you get energy and focus, you can attribute to better relations between the students. We do things together, we smile, we have fun, we look into one another's eyes, and before COVID-19, we touch each other's as well. We don't do that today, but still we will do the brain break. And we will show you an example on this today. So, pair up and face each other. You both extend your right foot and touch the inside of the partner's foot once while you count 1. Then you both extend your left foot and touch the inside of the partner's foot 3 times while you all count 1, 2, 3. Now you both extend your right foot again and touch the inside of the partner's foot while you count 1, 2. You repeat the exercise now starting with your left foot. Count 1, then right foot count 1, 2, 3, then left foot count 1, 2. When you are acquainted with the routine, apply a hopping or dancing rhythm 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2. And you can continue as long as you think it's fun.
When we talk about meaning and engaging education, meaning might be something like, does this make sense? We may all have experiences with students that ask themselves or even might tell us, this doesn't make sense. Why are we making this, or why are we doing this activity? And this is where you can actually talk to your students about meaningfulness and how we may perceive meaning. Because sometimes when we talk about the meaning of life or the meaning of an activity or some academic subject or whatever, meaning becomes something very universal, like what is the meaning, the purpose in life, which is very big and a very big question to answer. So we can actually break down meaning into 4 different levels. These 4 levels we will show in this model. So when you work with meaning and you talk to your students about meaningful activities and meaning related to engaging education, you may talk about meaning of an activity. For some students, the meaning or the sense that participating in a learning activity may have will be the meaning related to the fact that I like doing this, or I might even be able to work with my best friend. So this will be meaning at a very local level. The next level would be feeling meaning of the learning activity in terms of theme and subject, where the students can find meaningfulness in the activity because the student may actually relate the activity and the learning to the theme or the subject in general. The next level of meaning is where you talk about the meaning of working with the theme and the subject in terms of the student's life and development of knowledge in general. And the final step of meaning is this more universal or this larger perception of meaning, where you talk about finding meaning and purpose or sense of doing a learning activity, where you can relate it and reflect it upon your own life and life in the world in general. An example of how you may work with this model could be, let's say we have a subject where we talk and learn about separating garbage. Some students might say, but why do we do this? Some students might find the meaning and the purpose of doing this activity related to the fact that I get to do this with my best friend. One student might find it meaningful to separate garbage because they know that garbage is composed of different types of materials, and they can relate that to the subject in general. The next level of meaning would be that the student might find it meaningful because it relates not only to the theme and the subject in general, but to their life also. And the last level of meaning would be that the student can actually relate the activity and the learning about separating garbage to the whole world environment and the challenge of environmental issues. So this is an example of working with the model of meaning in your classroom. One thing that is meaningful to all people is the feeling of making a difference in somebody else's life. And a way to work with this very fundamental sense of meaning is to make posters in the classroom. An example of this could be to make one poster where it says things you can say that make a positive difference in somebody else's life. And you can make another poster saying things you can do in order to make a positive difference in somebody else's life. And then you will have your students write post-its, or maybe just come up with ideas, and you can be the secretary and mark the post-its, and you can stick the post-its onto the poster. And then before every recess, at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, whenever you choose, you may ask your students to choose one thing from the What Can I Say poster and one thing from the What Can I Do poster, and then have them or encourage them to do and say that one particular thing during the next recess or during the day. And just for the fun of it, I would like for you to choose one thing from the I Can Say poster and one thing from the I Can Do poster, and then encourage yourself to do and say that one thing during whatever is left of your day.
A is for accomplishment. We use the research of Alban Bandura and his angle on self-efficacy in order to promote accomplishment in the classroom. There are different strategies in order to make sure that the student has self-efficacy. One of the most important thing is to make sure that they have experiences of success, experiences of mastery. Also, one of the strategies is to use role models to make sure there's a classmate or another older student or somebody else who can act as a role model, who can show the stepping stones to these mastery experiences. Another strategy is to use verbal persuasion, to demonstrate, to show, to tell the student that you believe that they are capable, that they can do whatever you ask them to do. Also, an important strategy is to make sure that the environment in the classroom is creating safety, support, so they feel sure and secure in the classroom, and they dare say things aloud, they dare try different tasks. We also use the research by Charles Snyder and Shane Lopez about the hope theory. High hopes means that we accomplish even more. So, one of the important things about accomplishment is to create these star moments. And in order to demonstrate to you accomplishment, I will tell you a case story about my nephew. My nephew is 10 years old, and last Sunday he was taking go-karting for the first time in his life by his uncle, who is above 50, and his two cousins, who are 17 and 21 years old. They are much older than he is. They are much more experienced in go-karting than he is. So how do we make sure that he accomplished, that he has had a star moment trying go-kart for the first time in his life? Instead of comparing himself to his cousins or his uncles, what they did was they drove the go-kart for 3 rounds and they timed it. And what they looked at was the progression. And know what? My nephew had the greatest progression of them all. And guess what? My nephew had a great star moment trying go-kart for the first time in his life. That was a true mastery experience. What else you can do is to make sure that you know that the student has star moments in your classroom as well. So one little exercise you can do in class is to give each student a post-it note and then make them write one star moment they have had in classroom. And it's always a good idea to illustrate what you want the students to do by an example. But what you need to do is make sure that they know that star moments can be small, tiny moments, or it can be a huge experience. So use these small star moments to illustrate for the students that we all have star moments. It might be small, tiny moments, or it might be huge moments, but collect star moments for the students. Make sure you make room for star moments, to make room for the students to accomplish in the classroom.
After an exercise, it is important to use this star moment to thank each other, because that strengthens and builds the relationship. The first one we call the salmon clap. So take your right arm and then you will clap 3 times while looking into each other's eyes. You can do the normally high five if you want to, or put the hand above the heart and say thank you while they bow.
Thank you so much for being with us during this presentation. We hope that you feel ready to go out and engage your students and battle boredom in schools. Thank you.
Thank you.